Section 13 of the Golden Porch. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Beeswax Candle. The Golden Porch by W.M.L. Hutchinson. The Lad with One Sandal. Chapter 2. With the first light of day, Jason and two of his comrades set forth inland, that they might find some inhabited place, and learn if this was the country to which they were bound. Presently they spied smoke curling up through the trees of the forest, and they went towards it, and came to a great house of timber, standing in an open glade, with byres and barns around it. As they drew near, a lad met them, driving cows to pasture, and they asked him the name of the land, and who dwelt in that house.
"Strangers," said he, "this is the country of the Colchians, and yonder house is the palace of Aeetes, their king."
Then Jason and the two comrades with him, who were Castor and Polydeuces, were glad, because they were at their journey's end. And they went into the palace, and found the king sitting in the hall among his chieftains, dark-skinned men of fierce countenance, clad in golden armour of strange fashion. Aeetes looked grimly upon the strangers, but he bade them sit down and feast with him, and his slave set food before them in plenty, and dark sweet drink, brewed of herbs and honey. When they had eaten and drunk, the king asked them whence they came, and where they had left the ship that brought them, for he knew that they must have come by sea to his country, since by land it was walled about with trackless forests. And Jason answered discreetly, not making known his errand, but saying they were come from a land far south, and had moored their ship in the river not far away. "It is well," said the king. "Let your two comrades now go and bring the rest of your crew hither, that I may feast them all. Today we will make merry, and you shall try your mettle and sword play with my warriors, and tomorrow you shall tell me your errand." So the twin brethren went forth to fetch their comrades. But the king, under show of courtesy, kept Jason from returning to the ship, lest the strangers should put to sea and escape out of his hands. For this Aeetes was a cruel prince and a cunning, and he thought to make easy prey of these young men and their companions, and seize their fair wrought arms, and any treasure they might have with them. But meantime he covered his evil purpose with friendly speech, bidding Jason refresh himself after his voyaging, and caused him to be led to a chamber where a bath was made ready. As the youth entered it, he saw an ancient serving woman pouring water into the bath out of a steaming cauldron, and she said to him,
"Prince Jason, when you leave this chamber, the king's daughter will meet you, and offer you a posset in a silver cup. Beware you taste it not, for it is deadly, but pour it on the ground, and say, 'For those below.' Then give this to the king's daughter."
So saying, the old woman took a shining thing from her bosom, and gave it to Jason, and went quickly forth. But as she went out, the fashion of her changed, and she shone with a beauty not earthly, so that he perceived some goddess had spoken to him. Now the shining thing was in the form of a four-spoked wheel, and it was golden, and the figure of a speckled bird moulded in clay was bound upon the spokes by the outspread wings and by the feet. Jason viewed it with wonder, and he bathed himself quickly, eager to see what should next betide. Then, when he was arrayed again and came out of that chamber, there greeted him a dark maiden, robed in scarlet, and she offered him drink in a silver cup. But he took it from her hand, smiling, and poured the drink upon the ground, and said, "For those below." The king's daughter looked at the youth in silence, and her olive cheeks turned pale. "Princess of the Colchians," said he, "let it not displease you that I deal thus with your gift, but take a gift in return." And he laid the golden wheel in her hand, and left her standing mute. Now the daughter of Aeetes was a great enchantress, one that could draw the moon out of the sky by her incantations, and knew all spells that can be wrought with strange drugs and herbs of might. At her father's bidding she had mingled a potion for the stranger prince that would have destroyed him in 3 days, withering his veins with consuming fire. But by his offering it to the dead, she understood that he knew death was in the cup, and great fear of him took hold of her, for she had deemed that he had that knowledge by art magical, and that his gift was some potent charm. This in truth it was, as shall presently be told. As soon as Argo's crew were come to the palace, King Aeetes made them cheer with a feast of good things. And after the banquet he had them forth into a meadow, and desired them to show him what skill they had with their weapons. And he set 10 chosen warriors to sword play with Jason and 9 of his companions, while he sat to watch on a grassy knoll, and his daughter beside him. Then, under colour of sport, the Colchian warriors aimed deadly strokes at the strangers, for so had the king given secret command, trusting to see his champion slay those youthful guests right speedily. But the 10 comrades fought like young lions with their fierce adversaries, and when they saw the battle was for life or death, they spared not to smite them till all were slain upon the place. Sore wearied, but unwounded in that deadly fray, the heroes sheathed their resistless swords at last, and Jason cried to the king, "We are guiltless, Aeetes, of the deaths of these men. In an evil hour have we come to such a host as this, who would make it his pastime to see guests slaughtered before his face." Aeetes rose up with a laugh and answered, "They that fare to strange lands must meet with strange customs. But since you like our Colchian manner of sport so little, I will henceforth deal with you in earnest." With that he took them back to the palace. But because it was now late, he sent them to the guest chambers, saying he would hear their errand in the morning. That night the witch princess could not sleep for thinking on the bright-haired stranger and the meaning of the gift he had given her. She was afraid to keep it, and afraid to leave it, and she had it hidden in the folds above her girdle while she watched him fighting for his life with her father's best swordsman. Nor for all her skill and enchantments did she know that the spell of it was at work upon her even then. At last she slept, and dreamed that a queen crowned with roses stood at her bedside, and asked her what thoughts those were that troubled her. But when she essayed to answer, she could find no words, and fell to weeping. Then said the rose-crowned queen, "I am Aphrodite, known among gods and men for an enchantress of power, and to pleasure great Hera. I have put a charm upon you mightier than all your spells. For as the bird is bound upon the wheel I bade Prince Jason give you, so your heart is bound with cords of desire to the giver by the virtue of that charm. Rise now, and follow me to his chamber. The thoughts that you could not speak I know, and the struggle of your soul, but stronger than all is the thought that he must not die." The king's daughter awoke, and behold, she was no longer in her own chamber, but stood beside the sleeping stranger. Moonlight fell upon his face, and hair of ruddy gold, and the drawn sword by his side, and she looked at him long before she aroused him with a touch of her hand, calling him by name. "Who calls me?" said Jason, springing to his feet and grasping his sword. "It is I, Medea," said the king's daughter. "I am come to bid you fly from this house while it is yet night, for tomorrow Aeetes purposes to slay you and your comrades. Come, awaken the others, and I will unbar the gates meanwhile. The guards shall not hear us, for I have power to keep them slumbering soundly." "Noble Medea," answered the prince, "I have seen strange things on my way hither, but here is the strangest of all, that you, who would have destroyed me with your potion, are now fain to save my life. I thank whatever god has changed your heart towards me, and praise your kindly thought. But as for flight, neither I nor my true comrades will quit this place without the prize we are come in quest of." And thereupon he took Medea by the hand, and seated her beside him on the couch, and told her all the tale from the beginning, but the task Peleus laid upon him, and the Argo's perilous voyage. Now, while he spoke of the dangers he had passed, and pleaded with her in sweet persuasive words for help to win the golden fleece, pity and love overflowed the heart of the witch princess, and she forgot all the world but him only, and promised at last to aid him to the uttermost against her father. "For your sake, prince," she said, "I will brave the wrath of Aeetes, though he kill me when he finds his treasure gone, and ask but this for reward, that you'll think sometimes of Medea when you dwell happily in that far southern home you tell me of." Then Jason vowed a solemn vow that he would not leave her to suffer her father's vengeance, but take her home to be his wife and queen of fair Iolcos. And they plighted troth together in that same hour. Medea then fetched from her own chamber an ivory box of ointment, and bade him anoint himself therewith in the morning, and told him all else that he must do to outwit the crafty king. Thus did Queen Hera, with the help of Aphrodite, accomplish victory for Jason over the enchantress, who else would have proved a foe too strong for him and all his crew. No sooner had the king and his guests broken fast on the morrow than he said to them, "Let him that is captain among you now declare the cause of your coming hither." And Jason made himself known to him, and in courteous words desired him to restore the golden fleece to the rightful heirs of Phrixus. Aeetes heard him in silence to the end. Then he arose and beckoned the Argo's crew to follow him, and they went after him wondering to a fallow field hard by the palace. There they saw a huge plough of bronze lying, and 2 dun oxen stood near it, wondrous to behold. They had horns and hoofs of bronze, and breathed forth smoke and flame from their nostrils. The king marked with his staff a furlong on the ground, took up the heavy brazen plough-yoke, and yoked those great beasts therewith, heedless of their scorching breath that burnt black the grass around them, and the furious tossing of their terrible horns. Then, taking in hand a sharp-pointed goad of iron, he drove the oxen to the mark, and turned them, and so back again, cleaving the fallow soil with furrows deep and straight. And his guests watched with speechless amaze so great a marvel, till he unyoked his team beside them, and said, "If your chief can do as you have seen me do, the golden fleece shall be his. But I am sworn to give it to no man who cannot yoke my oxen and plough with my plough." Straightway Jason stripped off his saffron vesture, and stepped boldly to the task, putting his trust in divine aid. Even as Aeetes had done, so did he. He took up the yoke as it were a feather's weight, laid it on the necks of the oxen, despite their plungings hither and thither, and goaded them forward with one hand, while with the other he bore hard upon the plough's stilts, driving a true furrow alongside the king's. Aeetes looked to see him scorched to a cinder when he approached the fire-breathing bulls, but the flames had no power on his flesh by reason of Medea's enchanted ointment, and a wordless cry broke from the king, beholding him unscathed, and the godlike strength that was in him. But all Jason's comrades shouted with a great shout when the task was done, and they crowded about him to clasp his hands with praises and glad greetings, and they crowned him with a garland of flowering grasses. In silent rage the king now led the way to the grove of Ares, where hung the golden fleece. Yet he still had hopes that Jason, for all his prowess, would not be able to achieve the task that there awaited him. For the fleece had a guardian stranger, and more terrible than the oxen whose breath was flame. The grove of Ares was a gloomy wood of ancient oaks, that stooped their gnarled boughs low over dense undergrowths of brambles and juniper. A stone altar stood before it, stained with dark blood, and far within the green gloom was broken by a spot of radiance like the clear shining of a lamp. No voice of bird sounded in that drear wood, for all winged creatures shunned it except the woodpeckers, whose tapping was heard ever and anon in the deathly stillness. "Yonder light," said Aeetes, "is the glitter of the golden fleece, and you, bold prince, will need no other guide to lead you thereto." "King," said Jason, who was forewarned by Medea's counselling, "I fear to lay hands upon the sacred thing till I have offered sacrifice upon this altar, and besought mighty Ares not to be wroth at the taking away of the treasure which Phrixus dedicated here. Suffer us therefore to return to our ship for the night, and tomorrow we will bring offerings to the god of such things as we have." Aeetes gave them leave willingly, for now he feared Jason exceedingly, and was well content that he should either depart at once from the land, if such were his secret purpose, or meet his doom on the morrow from the guardian of the fleece. And one of these things he trusted would most surely befall, for that guardian was a dragon of baleful glaring eye, whose dappled coils were in length and thickness not less than the Argo's hull that had 50 oars. So the king returned to his house, and Jason and his comrades went towards the river where their ship lay. But when they were gone a little way, Jason told the others what had chanced in the night, and how the king's daughter had wrought him deliverance from the bulls, and shown him means to overcome a yet greater peril. When they heard of the dragon in the grove, they were full eager to fight the monster, and prayed their captain by no means to encounter him alone. But Jason said, "That task must be mine only, and with Medea to aid I shall not fail, if the gods so will. Do you, my comrades, hasten to our ship, and make all ready to sail whenever I shall come to you." With that he turned back and went alone to the dark grove, and at the setting of the sun Medea came to him there. But his comrades went on board the Argo, and looked well to all her gear, and set her sails, and when they had taken their supper, they sat each man at his oar, waiting in silence through the first watch of the night, while the autumn moon rose golden up the sky. And at midnight they were aware of 2 stately forms coming swiftly through the shadows of the wood, who seemed to carry between them a huge glittering shield. And the voice of Jason softly hailed them, and they saw that it was he and the witch princess who drew near, bearing a spear athwart their shoulders, whereon hung the fleece of gold shining like a sun. Without word spoken, the two laid their burden on Argo's deck, and Jason, with finger on lip, took his own place and made sign to his crew to give way. Silently they bent to their oars, and the good ship stole out into the stream and forth to the open sea. The helmsman turned her prow southward, but at that Medea cried, "Princess, steer not homeward on the course by which you came, for that way will Aeetes send to pursue you with a great host, and his ships sail fleeter than the wind through his enchantments. Long must be your voyage, even half the circuit of the world, but if you will trust to me for piloting, I will guide you safe home at last." The comrades hearkened gladly to those wise words, and turned Argo northward again at her command, and sailed for many days over a desolate sea where no man had come since the making of the world. At last, where that sea narrowed into a gulf between hills of ice and snow, they came forth upon the boundless ocean stream that girdles the round world, and now, by Medea's guidance, they steered eastward and southward, till the cold of the frozen north was left behind, and the sun's heat gladdened them again. 3 moons had risen and set, while Argo bore them along the ocean stream, before they saw on their right hand the red cliffs of a coast, and a wide channel of waters between. "Through yonder strait lies our way," said Medea, and they steered northward once again, along that firth of ruddy shores. Now at the head of it they found no passage for their ship, for dunes of yellow sand stretched before them as far as eye could see, and their hearts were discouraged. But Medea bade them draw Argo ashore, and said, "Beyond this sandy waste lies the midland sea, whose waters wash the shores of your own dear land. Be not downcast, brave comrades, for in 12 days Argo shall ride on that sea once more, if with stout hearts you endure the toil of bearing her thither." So when they had rested there that night, she who had been their pilot over 1,000 leagues of ocean guided the crew across the pathless desert, and they, by main strength, hoisting the ship to their shoulders, marched onward, thus laden under a burning sun. Never in their long seafaring had they known a labour like this, but the spirit of the heroes and the might of their young limbs did not fail nor falter in all that toilsome journey. On the 12th day, the glittering of water was seen among the sandhills, and they pressed onward joyfully, till they came to the margin of a vast and shallow mere. Now when they would have drunk of its water, they could not, for it was brackish, but Medea cast a certain herb therein, and forthwith it was sweetened. Then she said to them, This water is bitter with brine of the sea that neighbours it. Launch Argo now upon the mere, and let us seek a channel among the shallows that may bring us to the open main. So they pushed off from the reedy bank, and rowed slowly, steering warily through the shallows of that great lagoon, till the helmsman saw blue water sparkling ahead, and cried, The sea! The sea! Then the glad heroes plied their oars with fresh vigour, and ere nightfall Argo was anchored in a bay of the midland deep. At early dawn, when they had hoisted sail and were drawing up the anchors, a voice hailed them from the shore, and they turned in wonder to see who might call them in that lonely place. There at the wave's edge stood a man stately and tall, and greeted them with kindly words, and desired them to tarry a while and be his guests that day. But Jason and the rest made courteous excuse, pleading their haste to be at home. Friends, said the stranger, I will not seek to delay you, but at least take a guest gift from my hands, for I would fain show you hospitality. I am the king of this desert land, and I know who you are, and the quest you sailed on. Be pleased to take this boon, the only one I have at hand. So saying, he stooped down and took up a clod of earth of the shore, and held it forth to them. Now Argo's prow was nearest to the land, for thereby she had been moored, as the manner was, and it was not yet turned seaward. And he that stood nearest to her curved beak was a young prince named Euphemos. He, springing to the bulwark, leapt lightly ashore, and clasped hands with the stranger, and took the clod, and knew not what gift that was, nor who gave it. But as he sprang on board again, and turned to speak thanks and farewell, the stranger vanished where he stood, and awe came on all the comrades, understanding that they had seen the god of that wilderness. Nevertheless, they set forth again rejoicing, because he had shown them favour, and blessed them with a gift. Euphemos showed the clod to Medea, and asked her what it might betoken, and she answered that the time was not yet come for him to know, but he must look well to the keeping of it, because there was a magic in it. But when they had sailed 3 days, a gale blew from the south-west at twilight, and the waves rose high round the ship, and the enchanted clod was washed from the deck, where it was laid by the driving spray. Then Euphemos called aloud to Medea, Alas, wise lady, what shall I do? The precious thing is lost, carried overboard by a dashing wave, and it is sunk into the depths of the sea. Nay, said Medea, it has not sunk, for there is a magic in it, but is drifting even now to the shore of yonder island on our lee. Listen, heroes all, and I will tell you what power is in the clod, and what will become of it. It is fated that wherever it is laid upon the ground, the lord of that land should be lord also of the soil whence it was taken. And if Euphemos had brought it to the fields of his own fair domain, and planted it there, then in the day when his children's children will seek new lordship overseas, they would have sailed to the land where we saw the solitary god, and made it their kingdom. But now, because the clod is flung by the salt waves on the strand of yonder isle that is yet uninhabited, 17 generations of men must pass away before the god's gift bears fruit. For the descendants of Euphemos will make their home in that island, which shall then be called Pyrrha, and long after they will voyage thence to the land of the clod, and reign there as kings of many cities. The comrades listened in silence to Medea's prophecy, and pondered it in their hearts. And Euphemos ever after kept it in memory, teaching it to his sons, and they to theirs, and in the 17th generation the words were fulfilled. But now the gale freshened to a tempest, and Argo was driven before it out of her true course, and her crew were fain to run her for shelter under the white cliffs of another island far to northward. There they found a fair haven, where they anchored, and forthwith an armed host came out to them from the city nigh at hand. Argo's men stared at these warriors with amaze, for they were women, and their leader, a tall, black-haired girl clad in rich armour. She came to the harbour side and greeted the strangers, asking who they were, and if they came peaceably. "Peaceably in truth, O Queen," answered Jason. "We are men of Iolcos, homeward bound from a long seafaring, and we do but seek shelter here till the storm is overpast. Tell me, I pray you, what land this is, and wherefore its warriors are women."
"Stranger," said the armed maiden, "this land is Lemnos, and my father was king of it. He and all our menfolk went forth to war against certain pirates of the mainland, and while they were abroad, Aphrodite took displeasure at us women because we slighted her worship, and she caused us to become utterly hateful to our fathers and husbands when they returned. Therefore they have thrust us away from bed and board, and would have taken them wives of the captives they brought home. But we, thus wronged, banded together for revenge, and slew them while they slept with their own swords. Not one did we spare, except my father, but him, though I had sworn to show no mercy, I hid in a great chest, and had it thrown into the sea, that, if the gods so willed, he might drift to some other shore. Since then I, Hypsipyle, am queen, and none but women dwell in Lemnos. Arms we have, as you see, and have learnt the skill of them, to defend ourselves against all comers. But you, if you are what you say, we will welcome as guests."
Jason had little will to enter that city of dark deeds and consort with those women of fierce nature. But Medea said, "Our ship was blown hither not without divine purpose. Let us go ashore and lodge with the queen, as she would have us." So they sojourned 7 days in Lemnos. For all that time the wind blew rough and contrary. Queen Hypsipyle entertained the comrades royally, and held games in their honour, setting forth prizes of golden goblets and broidered mantles for running and wrestling and throwing the spear. For these the warrior women contended with the heroes, and overcame not a few of them, for they were cunning wrestlers, and marvellous fleet-footed. But in feats of strength they could not match Jason and his men, nor in the race for which the queen gave the richest prize of all, a silver shield embossed with wild bulls and hunters driving them into the toils. That race was run by 7 of the heroes in full armour, carrying their heavy shields, and there was laughter among the women when the 7th, whose name was Erginos, stepped to the starting place, because he, though yet young, was grey-haired. Yet he outstripped the rest and came foremost to the goal, and the mockers were ashamed when he took the silver shield and the victor's garland from the queen's hands. After this, the strangers found great favour with the island maidens, who would fain have had them for their wedded lords, and Hypsipyle made offer to Jason of her hand and kingdom, if he would abide in Lemnos. Now she was more beautiful than the Colchian enchantress, and Jason's heart was drawn to her, but false to his word he could not be, and that was given to Medea. But some of his comrades took them brides among the Lemnian damsels, and of these was Euphemos. And Medea at his wedding prophesied good fortune to the marriage. Moreover, the gods, she said, had willed him to find a wife in that island, for which very cause they had driven Argo to its coast. And the truth of her saying was quickly made manifest, for that very day the wind blew fair again for Iolcos, so that the heroes longed to set sail for home without delay. They listened not to any pleading, but made Argo ready for sea, and put their island brides on board, and went away. This was the last of their seafaring. The kindly breeze never failed till they dropped anchor once again in the haven where their good ship first floated. Here ends the story of Jason's quest for the Golden Fleece, for it needs not to tell the joy of his father and of all Iolcos at his homecoming, nor how the brave comrades took farewell when they had seen him receive the kingdom from Peleus, who durst not draw back from his oath to yield it. Jason and Medea were wedded with splendour and rejoicings, and thereafter they had such happiness as seemed good to the gods. But as for Peleus, though Jason did him no violence, he did not escape the death that was to be dealt him by his own kindred. For his daughters heard that Medea had made old Aeson young again by her spells, and they entreated her to do the like for their father. Then the enchantress killed an old ram before them, and cut it in pieces, and threw the pieces with magic herbs into a boiling cauldron, and when she had said certain words over it, forthwith she drew out a lamb alive and unhurt. And she gave a handful of herbs to the daughters of Peleus, saying, "Do to your father as you have seen me do to this sheep, which has become a lamb again." The princesses did so, but Medea had given them common herbs, and they had not bethought them to ask what those words were which she said over the cauldron. Therefore they could not bring their slain father to life again. Thus perished Peleus, even as the oracle had forewarned him, by a doom that had its beginning in the coming to Iolcos of the lad with one sandal. End of section 13.